The night the sheriff's deputies carried a single mother's belongings onto the curb, her two children stood on the lawn crying, clutching their school backpacks. Neighbors watched from their porches in stunned silence. The HOA president, Karen Mitchell, stood with her arms crossed and a satisfied smile on her face. What nobody on that street knew was that within a few weeks, Karen's entire plan would begin to unravel, and the very document she had relied on would become the evidence that destroyed her reputation. But to understand how it got that far, we need to go back 6 months. Emily Carter was not looking for trouble. At 38 years old, she was a widowed mother raising 2 children alone. Her husband had passed away 4 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving her to manage everything herself. Money was tight, but Emily worked hard. She had recently purchased a modest home in a quiet subdivision. It wasn't large or luxurious, but it offered something she desperately wanted for her children: stability. For the first few months, life was peaceful. Then Karen Mitchell decided Emily was a problem. Karen had served as HOA president for nearly 8 years. Many residents felt she enjoyed the authority a little too much. She constantly patrolled the neighborhood looking for violations. A trash can left outside too long? Violation notice. A flower bed she didn't approve of? Violation notice. A vehicle parked incorrectly? Violation notice. Most residents paid the fines simply to avoid arguments. Emily didn't know any of this when she moved in. The trouble started when she installed a small wooden play set in her backyard for her children. A week later, she received a notice. The HOA claimed the structure violated community guidelines. Emily reviewed the rules carefully. To her surprise, the playset appeared fully compliant. She politely emailed the HOA asking for clarification. Karen's response was brief. The structure must be removed immediately. Emily asked which rule had been violated. No answer came. Instead, additional notices began arriving. One complained about landscaping. Another claimed her fence required approval. Then came accusations regarding property boundaries. That was when Emily realized this wasn't about rules anymore. Karen was targeting her. Several neighbors quietly confirmed her suspicions. According to them, Karen had wanted Emily's lot for years. It sat next to a small, undeveloped parcel that Karen had repeatedly tried to incorporate into a neighborhood expansion proposal. Emily's property complicated those plans. Still, Emily tried to remain professional. She documented every notice, saved every email, kept copies of every payment. Months passed. Then one afternoon, a certified letter arrived. The HOA claimed Emily owed thousands of dollars in unpaid fines and legal fees. Emily was shocked. Many of those fines had never been properly explained. Others were tied to violations she had already corrected. She immediately disputed them. Karen refused to reconsider. The HOA's attorney soon filed legal action. Emily hired a lawyer despite the financial strain. She believed the truth would protect her. Unfortunately, reality proved far more complicated. The HOA's records appeared organized. Karen presented years of documentation, meeting minutes, violation logs, fee schedules. Everything looked official. Meanwhile, Emily struggled to keep up with mounting legal costs. Her savings disappeared. Then came the worst news of all. The court allowed enforcement proceedings to continue while certain disputes remained unresolved. The HOA moved aggressively. Before Emily fully understood what was happening, a foreclosure process had begun. Neighbors were horrified. Many believed the punishment was excessive. Some privately supported Emily, but few wanted to challenge Karen publicly. Karen's influence inside the community was significant. Weeks later, deputies arrived. Emily stood on her front porch trying to explain that appeals were still underway. Her children cried beside her. The deputies remained professional. They were simply enforcing an order. By sunset, Emily and her children were gone. Karen watched from across the street. To her, the battle seemed over. Emily's house would soon be sold. The obstacle standing in Karen's way would disappear forever. What Karen didn't realize was that one retired neighbor had spent months quietly collecting evidence. And buried inside a stack of HOA records was a document that would expose everything. For several days after being forced from her home, Emily Carter barely slept. She and her children were staying in a small rental unit across town. The place was safe, but every night her daughter asked the same heartbreaking question. "Mom, when are we going home?" Emily never knew how to answer. The legal battle had drained nearly everything she had. The HOA seemed unstoppable, and Karen Mitchell appeared more confident than ever. But while Emily was trying to rebuild her life, someone else was working quietly behind the scenes. His name was Robert Hayes, a 72-year-old retired surveyor who had lived in the neighborhood for more than 20 years. Robert had watched the entire situation unfold. Something about it had never felt right. The fines, the sudden legal action, the speed of the foreclosure. None of it made sense. So he began reviewing public records. What started as curiosity quickly became concern. Then concern turned into shock. While comparing HOA meeting minutes with county property documents, Robert noticed something strange. Several records didn't match. According to official county filings, Emily's property had always been fully compliant with established lot boundaries. But HOA records told a different story. Somehow, documents used during enforcement proceedings showed altered measurements. The differences were small, only a few feet. But those few feet changed everything. If the altered measurements were accepted as legitimate, part of Emily's property appeared to violate HOA requirements. If the original measurements were used, there was no violation at all. Robert checked the records again, then a third time. The conclusion remained the same. Someone had relied on inaccurate property information. He immediately contacted Emily's attorney. At first, the lawyer was cautious. But after examining the evidence personally, his attitude changed completely. The discrepancies were serious. Very serious. The attorney began filing requests for additional HOA records. Those requests uncovered even more problems. Emails, internal communications, meeting notes, documents that should have matched one another, but didn't. Several board members were interviewed. To the attorney's surprise, some admitted they had never personally reviewed certain enforcement actions. Instead, they had trusted information provided by Karen. One former board member revealed something even more troubling. Months before the foreclosure process began, concerns had been raised about the accuracy of property maps being used by the HOA. Those concerns were never properly investigated. The deeper the attorney looked, the worse things became. Soon the court agreed to review newly discovered evidence. For the first time in months, Karen appeared nervous. During the hearing, county officials testified regarding the official property records. The documents were clear. The measurements used against Emily did not match certified county records. The judge asked direct questions. Where had the alternate measurements originated? Who approved them? Why had corrections not been made when concerns were raised? Karen struggled to provide clear answers. The courtroom grew quiet. Then came the moment that changed everything. An email was introduced into evidence, written nearly a year before the foreclosure. In it, concerns about the property data had been specifically brought to Karen's attention. She had received the warning. She had read the warning. And according to the email trail, no action had been taken. The judge was visibly troubled. Within weeks, rulings began coming down. The foreclosure process was overturned. Emily's ownership rights were restored. Additional investigations followed. The HOA faced legal consequences and significant financial liability. Several board members resigned. Karen stepped down as president. Her reputation in the community was shattered. But for Emily, the most important moment came on a quiet Saturday morning. She pulled into the driveway of her home, the same home she thought she had lost forever. Her children jumped out of the car before it even stopped moving. They ran across the lawn laughing. Her daughter hugged the front porch railing as if greeting an old friend. Emily stood there for a moment with tears in her eyes. Not because she had won, because after months of fear and uncertainty, her family finally had their home back. The neighbors who had once been afraid to speak gathered to welcome her. Some brought flowers. Others brought food. Many apologized for staying silent. Emily didn't hold grudges. She understood how intimidating the situation had been. What mattered now was moving forward. Months later, new HOA leadership introduced transparency rules and stricter oversight procedures. Residents became more involved. Records became easier to access. And decisions were no longer controlled by one person. As for Robert, the retired surveyor who uncovered the truth, Emily often said her family owed him more than they could ever repay. Robert always answered the same way. I didn't save your home. The truth did. And in the end, That was exactly what happened. A single mother lost nearly everything because one powerful person believed nobody would question her decisions. But facts have a way of surviving. Documents have a way of resurfacing. And sometimes, the people who seem powerless are simply waiting for the truth to catch up. The lesson? When authority operates without accountability, ordinary people can suffer greatly. But when good people refuse to ignore what they know is wrong, even the most carefully constructed schemes can fall apart.